Hi everyone, Rabbi Abram here. I gave this sermon on December 11th. Here we go. The last few weeks, I have shown a paradigm shift of the qualities required from our patriarchs. After Abraham, our Torah is looking for specific skill sets from his progeny. So I presented a theory that the Jacob cycle was a shift, that our Torah required a patriarch to be clever and cunning rather than strong and violent. For example, Esau, the firstborn, was supposed to be our tradition's patriarch. Instead, it was the second son, Jacob. None of us consider ourselves to be Edomites, who are the progeny of Esau. We consider ourselves as Israelites, the progeny of Israel, whose name was changed from Jacob. Now, we need to be a bit careful here, because I don't think the Torah is saying, hey, we are now making whomever is born second the patriarch from now on. What I believe the Torah is telling us is that it's choosing the patriarch via a meritocracy rather than a birth order. The brother that achieves the most is the official patriarch. A problem with the meritocracy is that it's not clear who is the chosen son for some time. The advantage of a firstborn son system is you know who is chosen right away. When you have 12 boys, they have to achieve things before we know who gets the job of patriarch. And this week's portion brings us not one, but two contenders, Joseph and Judah. Attempting to declare the winner is a bit of a nail-biter. Right out of the gate of this portion, we see that Joseph is a poor fit to be a shepherd, and this must most likely a poor choice for the title of patriarch. Most people say he is too young to be a shepherd, which is why he ends up becoming Jacob's messenger. I would argue that he is just a bad sheep herder, and Jacob can't think up of anything else for him to do. This would explain why his brothers hate him so much. Not only is he horrible at his job, or that he is Jacob's favorite child, but he also keeps telling his brothers about his dreams, for he is better than them, and they have had enough. Their hate for their brother, unfortunately, led to some ugly choices. The brothers sell Joseph to slavery and plant evidence of his death to deceive their father. However, this served to get Joseph to an environment where he can thrive, Egypt. And this is the new twist of what's needed for a patriarch. Because Joseph is not cut out to be a sheep herder, but when it comes to living in a cultured civilization, Joseph excels. He is sold to Potiphar, who holds the royal position of chief of guard, and Joseph essentially works his way up to chief of staff for Potiphar. We're seeing another paradigm shift. Instead of picking the wealthiest sheep herder to be a patriarch, the Torah is moving the goalposts and changing the necessary qualities that make a patriarch. A patriarch needs to be incredibly competent in a civilized society. Now, earlier I mentioned that Joseph is not the only contender for the title of patriarch. Judah is also a candidate, and something strange happens in this week's portion. We're having a good time reading Joseph's story in chapter 37 of Genesis, and we move to chapter 38, looking forward to reading what happens next to Joseph. But chapter 38 is not about Joseph. Halfway through Joseph's story, a story about Judah inserts itself. And there is a lot of speculation as to why there's a story about Judah here. Some say it's thematically relevant. Others say that it's the great Tanakh redactor who had the story and couldn't find a better place for it. And there are a lot more theories. But its insertion leads to a question. Who gets to pick the patriarch? Well, the first answer is, of course, God. I think there is more going on here than God just trying to pick the best person. Because if you remember, in 722 BCE, the Assyrians conquered northern Israel and essentially disappeared 10 tribes. This included Joseph's progeny. Judah, Benjamin, and some Levites were the only tribes left. Judah becomes the dominant tribe because Benjamin was a very small tribe, and the Levites' jobs were just to help the priests. A patriarch is only valuable if its tribe still exists. So Joseph, no matter how competent, intelligent, powerful, and wealthy he becomes, can only really be considered a patriarch until 722 BCE. Because us Jews inherited our tradition from a combination of Judahites, Benjaminites, Levites, and priests. Judah sort of wins the patriarch game by luck. He himself has no particular valuable qualities, but he is the progenitor of David and Solomon. Or it's not luck at all, but another paradigm shift. No longer can the force of will of one person control the entire destiny of the Israelites and the Jewish people. A single patriarch is just not enough. Which is why after Jacob we have 12 tribes of Israel. 12 distinctly groups of people who are tasked with keeping themselves as Israelites alive and wealthy. One could argue that God decided to hedge God's bets. Instead of relying on one person to be God's chosen, God is now relying on 12. Okay, so back to the question. Who picks the patriarch? The answer is the survivor does. Joseph was indeed a great patriarch, but the Judahites survived the longest, long enough to insert their own chapter in the middle of the Joseph story, as if to say, yeah, Joseph has a great story, but we control how this book is written because we are still here. So Joseph's cycle makes for an incredible storytelling. It's really boring Judah. It's really the boring Judah whose tribe survives the longest, builds the temple, and continues the Israelites' line to modernity. In fact, the word Judaism is derived from Judah's name. And this, for me, is anticlimactic. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph's stories are compelling, engaging, and legendary. Yet here we see the most likely truly successful patriarch is Judah. We don't even really consider him a patriarch. His name is not mentioned in most of our liturgy. Yet there is some wisdom here. The Torah's evolving nature of how it chooses a patriarch evolved not to a person with an amazing story, but a person who managed to truly multiply in the literal sense of the word. Thank you.